It was a cold February in 2014. I was attending my first class in my film minor studies, and I had to do an impromptu presentation on a movie of my choice from whatever point of view I was interested in. And I had no idea. None. I didn't know what to do. So I rose from my seat. I looked around in the auditorium. There were at least 100 people. Then I looked down. There was the podium and a staircase leading to it. So very slowly I approached my final destination. With every step I took, I felt the gazes of 100 pairs of eyes just stabbing at my heart, my nerves, my soul. I didn't know what to do. I just no idea what I'm gonna say. So I reached the staircase, then I went down and then to the podium. And stood up there and looked around. I saw the eyes. They wanted me to tell a story. To tell something they haven't heard that day, or they didn't really expect to do so. And that's what I did. I stood there, tall, and I told them. I muttered under my abated breath. I told them. I told all of them. Despicable Me 2 is the Bridget Jones diaries for men. And they were severely unimpressed. They really were. They did not care, nor did they understand. They scoffed. They laughed, especially the women. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So I started talking and it went absolutely nowhere. It's not a good memory. And a very telling start to my career in film studies. But I'm 7 years older now. And I know what I know, and I'm gonna use it. It's time to prove my point. It's time to prove them wrong. Dead wrong. In order to prove my point at last, we will need to dissect this bitch. And we will start with the premise. What's a premise, you ask? Well, for the uninitiated, a premise is technically the thesis statement for a movie. And throughout the story, it has to be supported, attacked, disproven from all sides. And in the end, you will get the answer. Was your thesis statement true or not? That's a premise. And Despicable Me 2's premise is You know what? I'm gonna recount the plot for the uncultured Philistines who do not remember the gracious and truly extraordinary plot of Despicable Me 2. Fuck. I hate recounting plot. Oh shit. is living a happy but lonely life with his family of 3 daughters. The girls also feel that a mom is missing from the picture, but Gru doesn't want to meet anybody. Dr. Nefario gets poached by another unnamed villain.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
A hot agent from the anti-villain league named
Lucy Wilde of the AVL. Oh, oops.
appears because they need Gru's help with a stolen monster serum. He's taken in against his will and gets recruited to find the thief. They establish a cover for Gru in the form of a bakery where he can sell his homemade jam and jelly. There, he meets the wigmaker and Eduardo Perez, who Gru swears looks like a long-dead villain named El Macho. Margot falls in love with Eduardo's son. After a brief investigation, Gru finds traces of the serum in the wigmaker's shop. Then Gru reluctantly goes on a date with an annoying hot girl, but the real hotness saves him and ends up spending the evening with Lucy. Gru becomes really happy, and then the AVL arrests the wigmaker, but Gru swears they got the wrong guy. Meanwhile, the little yellow shits are getting abducted one by one and turned into purple monsters by the serum. Lucy's assignment is done, so she has to fly to Australia. Gru becomes depressed and goes to Eduardo's party with the girls. There he finds out for sure that El Macho is indeed Eduardo and that he is Dr. Nefario's new employer. El Macho kidnaps Lucy. Gru tries to save her. Dr. Nefario helps him out with changing the purple minions back into yellow, the little shits. Gru decides to ask Lucy out on a real date, and the two of them jump down from the rocket heading to a volcano, which was the same way El Macho pretended he died. Gru and Lucy marry each other and they become one big family. God damn it. I hate recounting plot. I just got word of the premise. And it's... I don't know. I have no clue. I'm just trying to be funny here. I have no idea. So... let's take a look at the characters and the storylines, I guess? I'm starting to lose my patience here. Fuck. I don't want to stay dumb. I've been nursing this fucking thought for 7 years. God damn it. No. I'm a man. Yeah. I'm a man. I can do this. So these are the significant characters of the movie. But some of them are absolutely pointless for our work to keep around. So let me turn into a good capitalist and drop half of the applicants with ethnic-sounding names. Edith doesn't do anything either. Dr. Nefario is also very inconsequential. So Ramsbottom stays, even though he barely has the qualifications to do so, but he has a very funny name indeed. Right, guys? So, the storylines in the movie. Gru wants love. Gru saves world. Agnes wants mom. Margot wants love. And the little shits. Number 4 leads nowhere and does not matter in the slightest. Number 5 has no point and is absolutely inconsequential. That leaves us with storylines 1, 2 and 3. And they can be put into 2 categories. What are those, you ask? Well, back in the distant past of the beginning of the previous decade, we believed in such nonsense as themes. We would write those things for our stories. We were so innocent. We were such sweet summer children, you know? Those were easier days. And these are none other than masculinity and love. Masculinity. Gru fights off a morning star with a spatula.
Oh my God, what is that?
I'm sorry.
What is it?
It's the morning.
Gru's weapon makes a unicorn balloon. Gru is a princess. Gru pushes away femoids. Gru is defeated by a
Lipstick taser.
Gru wants to make jam and jelly.
Jams and jellies.
Gru's alibi shop is a pink cupcake place named Bake My Day.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Gru in the wig shop. Masculine traits can be observed, such as being bald versus not being bald, and getting the ladies with hair on your head, or trophies and constantly trying to get approval because of having said trophies. Also, the hip thrust, which is very, very telling when it comes to masculinity. And doing the hip thrusts lead him to diverting the plot into the negative by getting the wigmaker accused of a crime he clearly did not commit. After the first day, Gru goes home and doesn't want to do his usual round of putting the girls into bed. And after that, he sits in his rhino throne on the plane. Lucy only sees Gru's head on a man when she is looking at the in-flight magazine, but when she looks around, she only sees Gru's head on women and a baby. But what a real man is like? Let's ask Eduardo. Eduardo is a Latin lover character. Look at his clothes. Look at the colors. He's a charmer. Look at the way he talks. His speech is very pop culturally erotic. His body type is the opposite as Gru's. Dancing is a really important activity for Eduardo. When Eduardo dances, he's not only using it as proving his own masculinity, but with that always comes the emasculation of other men. For example, using a man's own wife to emasculate him through dancing. And when Gru tries to get into Eduardo's lair, he is obviously emasculated by Eduardo's dance. Eduardo is pro-love and pro-sex. Listen to what he says about his son getting some.
Young love is beautiful, no? They must get to know each other better.
This is also important, because clearly being pro-love and pro-sex is absolutely something that never bodes well for women. The example here is Margot and Antonio. Look at the El Macho scene. I don't know what to tell you. It's brutal, it's pointless, it's masculine. Eduardo turns minions into super masculine monsters that can only destroy.
Men like you, men like me, we should be ruling the world!
The film shows that masculinity is a one-way street. It is destructive both to the self and to the environment and is absolutely isolating in the end. That is why Gru's undecided masculinity is the antithesis to that idea. Tit. Oh, anyway. Through Eduardo we get the notion that masculinity only leads to chaos. There is no such thing as toxic masculinity. It's just that traits that are socially accepted as masculine can only lead to chaos and suffering. Eduardo even explains the core idea of masculinity, which is isolation.
Gru, please. I know that look all too well. It is the look of a broken heart. Believe me, my friend, I too have spent many nights trying to drown my sorrows in guacamole. But we are survivors. There's much more to us than meets the eye.
Where you cannot open yourself up to the world or to other people, because then you will get hurt. And you don't want to do that. And the antidote to masculinity is actually femininity. This is showcased in the movie by putting the antidote to the serum into the jam and jelly, which has already been built up as this signal for femininity.
I'm developing a line of delicious jams and jellies.
And that would make Eduardo the villain, the antagonist, right? No, not at all. I get that one of the franchise's baselines is being evil for evil's sake, and each entry is playing on that, but we don't really know why Eduardo wants to do what he does. He wants to destroy the world and Gru wants to save it, but that's only Gru's motivation. It's not his drive. Eduardo has nothing to do with Gru's drive, so he's not the antagonist. Because Gru's drive is actually finding love.
I want the party princess, please. Please, I'm begging you.
Which is the second theme of the movie. Love. In the birthday party scene, Gru stands alone while being on his phone with Jillian next to him with some random dude she is desperately trying to pick up. This is important because Jillian keeps on trying to get Gru a girlfriend or just some random tale. And after that, Gru says this.
The refund! I want the party princess, please. Please, I'm begging you.
What Edith says.
I know what makes you a boy. Your bald head.
Gru going on a bad day that he knows 100% is doomed to failure, but he still goes out because he wants love. Agnes consoles Gru on the porch because he's very down because of Lucy.
Think so, sweetheart.
Was there anything you could do?
The wedding! Ugh. And still no premise. Not by a long shot. I mean, there's nothing between Lucy and Gru. There's nothing keeping them apart, practically. I mean, Lucy goes to Australia, but she just decides on a whim that she wants to be with Gru instead of working her new job, and she practically quits her assignment without any repercussion, and Eduardo is not keeping them apart. In fact, he kind of reunites them? So that's fucking busted. You know, no. We're gonna take a look at Gru. He's the main character. Let's take a look at him. Is he passive or active? Movies oftentimes work with two different worlds in them. They are not necessarily geographically distinctive, but they have a shift in value in them. This is the real world and the underworld. The plot moving forward means that these worlds are alternating. If the real world is associated with a good value, then the underworld is with a negative value, and then you have the real world and then you have the underworld. In this movie's case, we start out with kind of a lukewarm value because Gru is a happy family man, but he is very lonely. That's his real world. His underworld is getting into the AVL. Whether a protagonist is a good one or not can be determined by the choices he makes, or the choices they make. Because usually, the alternation from one world to another should be the choice of the protagonist. Now, in this case, the first alternation going from real to underworld, Gru is kidnapped. It's not his choice. Getting back to the real world is also not Gru's choice, because even though he is the one pointing at the wingmaker who has some rendition of the serum, he is absolutely sure that the wingmaker did not do it because he thought that El Macho was the bad guy, which turned out to be true. So this alternation was also out of his hand. The case got shut down and Lucy was sent away because the signs that he recovered told everyone at the ABL that the wigmaker was the bad guy, but he wasn't. And Gru also said that he probably was not, because he thought that El Macho was the bad guy, which turned out to be true. So in this case also, it was not Gru's choice to alternate into the next world where he is fired by the ABL with a job well done and losing Lucy. On the next transition, he actually is making a choice because he has to save or wants to save Lucy, and after that they get married. These stories usually go like this. We start out with the real world, which has a negative value added to it. Then we go to the underworld, where the hero discovers this new kind of environment and habitat, and he learns from it. This is kind of the best part of his story, or of their story. And then they have to get back into the real world, and they realize that the other world is so much better than the real one, they have to do something about it. And then they go into the underworld to make a real change and make the underworld their real world. When Gru performs traditionally masculine activities and displays traditionally masculine traits, he is forced to do so by his environment. For example, the date he goes on, he has to put on a wig to hide his baldness, or the hip thrusts, which is very comical, and we're supposed to feel sorry for him and appreciate the silliness of the situation, or like the instance of calling a woman in order to get a date out of her, or bringing the woman/trophy home. All of these are very masculine traits and activities, or what have yous. Gru wants to decide whether he's a man or a woman, whether he's a father or a mother. So this practically yielded us nothing. But what does Gru have to sacrifice? Most stories are about a hero who has to sacrifice something. In The Dark Knight, Batman has to sacrifice his own image in order to save the soul of the city. And Jesus Christ had to sacrifice his own flesh in order to save the soul of the world. So what does Gru have to sacrifice? Something that he holds dear? And what is that? He has nothing that he has to sacrifice? Him being in limbo, or being undecisive about his gender, or just like with Lucy's great sacrifice, all he has to do was to ask out a girl and not to jump into the volcano and not be alone. All the movie does is hammering away the idea that being isolated, being alone, is a perfectly masculine thing to do. And where does masculinity end? Jumping into a volcano and die. So all he has to do is not do that. But this is not a sacrifice. This is bullshit. And you see, that's where I have to ask a question. Does this movie have a story? No, it doesn't. A story is something that has a thesis, that is attacked and supported all throughout the movie or book or whatever. And in the end, you get an answer. Was it right or was it wrong? But the tale, however, is just something gets stated and then it ends. And that's it. This story is not a story. Despicable Me 2 has no story, it's a tale. And what is this tale about? Well, it's about masculinity. It's about how masculinity robs people, hurts people, and isolates you, humiliates people, and in the end will always destroy you, no matter what. This is not a great message in the year of our Lord 2021. It wasn't a great message back in 2014. Let alone now. You know, as someone who is prone to struggle with his own masculinity and what it means to be a man in this day and age, shit's fucked up. And I know I'm not the only one. You know, I have my script there that I have written, and at this part I would say that I'm not angry. I should be angry, but I am not. I'm disappointed or whatever. Not because I have wasted 7 years of my life, and I did not. Throughout the 7 years, once a year, this whole shebang came to my mind, but nothing else. And, you know, I'm kind of angry because this is not healthy. This is not okay. Clearly, the creators wanted to jump on the SJW bandwagon and the, the critical theory bandwagon, which resulted in nothing. You know, the only redeeming quality in this product is none other than its sheer and absolute nothingness. The way it's trying to tell a story, its storytelling is just nothing. It's a nothing burger. It doesn't exist. It doesn't have a bite. It doesn't have teeth. It has nothing. You know, unlike Triumph of the Will or Wonder Woman, which is a very funny comparison. Still, I think. But this, sorry, I have to scratch my nose. I'm allergic to bullshit, it seems. But this, I mean, this is a point where I would draw the comparison between Bridget Jones' Diary and this fucking smut. And you know what? Let's do it. If we look at Bridget Jones' Diary as a story where you go through the motions of trying to get someone in your life that you can be happy with, and there are certain phases to it, then yes, there is some similarity, as this movie is trying to draw another chart, which starts with being a little baby and going on birthday parties and meeting with girls, and you're afraid of them. Then you become an adolescent and you go to the mall and you fall in love, and then you get your first number, but you don't really have the courage to call them, and then you go on a date and it fucking sucks always. But then you start going on real parties, and then you cry, and that's where the comparison ends.
So it begins.
You know, Bridget Jones' Diary has this sublime message which sounds really moved from my stupid masculine mouth, which, you know, they say, I like you just the way...
Just as you are.
You are. No, I like you just as you are.
Yes.
This is perfect. This is sublime. This was a message that was prevalent back 21 years ago, and it's even stronger today. It's getting stronger day by day in a society where you can choose everything about what you like, and you can get exactly what you want out of everything, even people. And there's this thing that tells you that, hey, you are perfect just the way you are. It doesn't matter what other people want. You are perfect, and you should have the courage to look at yourself as perfect. I know it sounds stupid and moved from my face, but still, this whatever couldn't even really hold a candle to something like Bridget Jones. Come on, Bridget Jones for man. Come on, dude, my ass. This is bullshit. Jesus Christ. Oh, and by the way, when conducting the research, I started to write long pages on the parallel shift between the childish and destructive slapstick of the Minions and the cognitively cohesive adult world storyline. Turns out, the Minions just like to fart and eat bananas. Oh, and just a little random fact. The head writer of this fucking... Oh, and one more interesting thing. The head writer of these movies is actually the guy who lends his voice to the little yellow shits. You know, it's just a random fact. It has nothing to do with anything.
Eh?